We're ready. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. It's good to be back somewhat in person, at least in hybrid mode. Let's call the November meeting of the CAC to order. There are 7 of us here physically present in the county center, and I thank those members who were able to join us in person to help us with our forum. I think I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call. Cheryl, if you would call the roll, so we'll know who is in attendance.
Yes, sir. In person, Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Here.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Here.
Amy Espinoza,
Amy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
we can hear you now. Virtual, Christina Costa,
Here.
Vivian Handy, Artie Fryer, Ed Mardrewski,
Here.
David Bailey,
Here.
Jeff Lucas, Cliff Reese,
Here.
Camilo Soto, Terrence Trott,
I'm here. Good morning, afternoon.
Nicole Rice, Rick Richmond,
Here.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Bobak. We have an in-person quorum of 7.
Very much. Thanks again, everyone, for attending, both in person and virtually. The next item on our agenda is public comment. We have a person signed up for public comment today.
I'm looking to see if we have any raised hands. I don't see anybody. Cheryl, I don't think we got any advanced public comments either.
No, we didn't.
I did receive a missive from Christopher Vela, which I printed out and handed out to the members. It's quite voluminous, but it speaks to the issues that I think he raised with the MPO board back on November 4th related to the non-discrimination plan and other topics. So I think that's the only communique I've had from a member of the public.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hearing no further public comment, we'll close that portion of the meeting. We will move on to the approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes, September 9th and from October 13th. What's the pleasure of the committee? Do I hear a motion for approval of one of us? Motion to approve. Steve Hollenkamp makes the motion to approve both. Is there a second? I'll second. Rick Fernandez, second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Cheryl, do we need to do a roll call on these minutes?
We can do a roll call.
Please. Let's do that.
Bill Robert,
Yes?
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Aye.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinoza, Christina Costa,
Yes.
Vivian Handy, Artie Fryer, Ed Mardrewski,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Aye.
Jeff Lucas, Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilo Soto, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Nicole Rice, Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Letitia Walker, Alexis Bobek. Motion carries 13-0.
Both meetings have not been approved. We'll move into the action items on today's agenda. We have 4 items to come before us. The first is Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Shaka, are you going to make that presentation?
Yes, I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon all. This is Vishaka Shivraman, MPO staff. And today I'm going to be presenting the TIP amendments for you for the November committees. Rich, next slide, please.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
See the TIP amendments.
All right, I'll move on.
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, today we have 3 amendments in front of us. Amendments 15 through 17. We had the previous ones were all our roll forward amendments, which came in August, September. Today, the first amendment is for HART, FTA discretionary funds. The second one is for wrong way detection system. And the third one is for corridor lighting. Rich, can you please move on?
Yeah.
This is just to bring you a quick update about what this amendment does. HART had requested this funds for fueling for the purchase of 4 zero-emission electric buses and for new charging infrastructure. So the charging infrastructure will match up to the standards, and the zero-emission buses are what HART has committed towards putting the lowest polluting and the most efficient energy-efficient vehicles on the roads. This funds will be received as part of the FTA's discretionary funds grant. If you notice here that the total amendment will add a cost of $5.485 million towards capital purchase funds in FY 2021. But the FTA portion is 2.7 million and the local portion is about 2.74 million, which will be shared by both HART and TICO. Like I said before, this will allow HART to improve the access, mobility, and service reliability for Tampa. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an update about what this comparative report does. If you can see here, I mentioned earlier that there is 2 parts of the funding, local funds and FTA funds, both add to a total of 5.485 million. And it comes in 2021. Next slide, please. The second amendment was Amendment 16 towards the wrong way vehicle detection system in interstates 275, I-75, and I-4. I have shown here below the various locations where it will be installed. It is at I-4, 2 locations, I-75 at Fowler, and I-275 at all these locations. I-275 is at Bird Street, Bush Boulevard, Scott, and Ashley Drive. This is part of a countermeasure implementation plan by FDOT, and it helps to install new cameras and signs and pavement markings for this for the wrong way detection system. And this will be an upgrade to what is existing currently. This amendment will add about 1.2 million in construction funds in FY 2021. I will show you the next slide which has a map. Rich, next slide, please. Yes, this is just to give you an update about where I had mentioned earlier that there are 7 locations, and at I-75 and Fowler, this detection system is installed at all the ramps, both the entrance and the exit ramps at north and south of I-75 and Fowler. The others I had mentioned earlier. So these are the maps where the various systems will be installed. Next slide, please. This is again to give you an idea about the comparative report. This adds 1.2 million in FY 2021 towards construction costs. It is again a part of, you can see the description that it says it's a part of the countermeasure implementation. and it's an advanced construction for intersection crashes detection system. So that's what this fund is adding money to. Next slide, please. The third amendment, what I bring to you before, is the corridor lighting at various locations in Hillsborough County. FDOT had identified that these 5 locations are one of the top, are some of the top 12 locations in the county where there are nighttime crashes. So as part of the lighting retrofit to the existing poles, the 5 locations which FDOT has identified are Hillsborough Avenue from Dale Mabry to I-275, US 301 from Baum Road to Bloomingdale Avenue, State Road 674 from US 41 to 30th Street, Brandon Boulevard from Falconburg to Rolling Hills Boulevard, and US 301 from Crescent Park Drive to Broadway Avenue. Again, this funds is for about 1.8 million. It adds construction funds in FY 2021. And I will show you in the next slide with the comparative report. Rich, please. This you can see in the comparative report, the amount I have highlighted as 1.835 million added in 2021 towards construction funds. It is part of the Vision Zero category of the LRTP, and the funds is towards HSP projects, advanced construction funds. With this, we can move on to the last slide. And next slide, please, Rich. Thank you. I would like to request your recommended approval for the TIP amendments 15, 16, and 17 and recommend it to the board for approval. If you have any questions, I can answer them now.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Any questions from here in the room? Amy, you have a question?
Yes, my question is, does this cover the underpass as well, or is just this for like street poles?
I'm sorry, Amy, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Rich. Let me just request the members to project your voice if you can, and there's little microphones that look like little silver discs that should be pretty close to each position. We were testing this the other day, and it's not ideal, but it's the best we can do for the moment. So I have heard through the chat that some people are having difficulty hearing. So I guess I would just ask everyone to please speak up as much as possible. But Amy, would you ask your question again?
Is this better? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, my question was in the areas where there is an underpass, does the lighting cover those areas, or is this just street lighting?
Amy, I am really not sure about where the actual location of the map is, but as far as I understand, it's just corridor lighting on the streets. But I can, that's a good question, actually. Thanks for asking me that. I have the locations, but I haven't looked at what the project map is and what the specific plans are. What I can do is I can request FDOT staff member to get that information, and I can forward it to you. Would that be helpful?
Thank you.
Sure, I will get that information. Thanks. I see another question from Christine and Mr. Richmond.
Here in the room, Stephen Hollicat.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question on the funding of this last one. One, what does ACSS stand for? And two, I may have missed it. Is FDOT helping with this funding, or we're just doing this completely ourselves and we decided to invent this?
I understood the first part of the question. The ACSS was advanced construction of safety for safety projects. I had it in a small box. If Rich wants to pull it out, it was given there. ACSS is advanced construction of HSP projects, which is part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program.
It's state funded, right?
No, they are federal funds.
They're federal funds. Okay.
The questions in the room, Hort Pringle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question I have.
But sorry, Stephen, I couldn't hear the second part of your question. Do you want to ask once more, or do you want to type it up?
It's okay. Rich answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Hoyt Prendel. Hopefully you can hear me. I had a question related to project number 445507, the wrong way driver vehicle detection system.
Sure.
I thought during one of the meetings approximately a year ago when one of the DOT officials was here that I had a question regarding the usage of freeway entrance signs, which are standard in other states around the country like California, which have been proven to reduce wrong way crashes because it essentially provides drivers with a positive indicator, you know, so if one ramp they see the do not enter sign, and the other ramp they see a green freeway entrance sign, it helps with the distracted driving. Did FDOT provide us with any additional information about that, or is that something even being discussed?
Yes, Mr. Brindle. I did speak to the project manager yesterday, and he gave me project plans. But I can tell you briefly that it is wrong way signs. Plus, it has cameras installed on top of it, and some of them have solar panels. So it's mostly a combination of one of those. But definitely, signs are there. And when the wrong way driving, I mean, when a driver enters that, it actually sends a notification. It sends a signal to the nearest traffic management center, and they will be alerted. But if you want to see, but most of them are the same. So those are. I have the project sheets with me. If you want, I can send them to you. And also wanted to add that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. They also update the signals, pavement markings, and the pedestrian crossing signs at the ramps. So those are all brought up to standards, and which is part of the new FDOT standards for the ramps. So those are also being updated as part of this project.
Well, I know my question's a bit nuanced. I understand the thing about the signage and triggering system, but specifically with regards to the use of the freeway entrance signs on ramp, because that's something that could be implemented even at ramps that do not have the technology that these particular new ramps are going to have. I mean, I don't know if anybody else knows what I'm talking about, or you can even see this. They look like this. It's a green sign. It's fairly simple. It just says it's with the placard. And California specifically has shown that significantly reduces wrong way crashes on the freeway, which is why they've been using them since the 70s. So that was just my specific question. I realize it's a bit.
No, in fact, I did talk to the project manager yesterday, and I was talking with some of the intersections or some of the off ramps where if you go on the wrong way, you see the signs, but it's not there at the so you see a wrong way sign, but you don't see the entrance signs. And I had the same thought too, but I did ask the project manager, but at this time they're only doing this, but it's a very good suggestion. I will see if, I haven't personally seen them in Florida, but I had the same thought to what you asked me today. And I did talk to the project manager about that. I will check with them if that is trying to be implemented as part of the newer standards, but this is as per the latest FDM standards that they are bringing up these signs.
Okay, I would just appreciate a follow-up on that specific issue, because to me, this goes to one of the issues sometimes that I feel like FDOT gets a little pushed into spending more money on solutions that are great, but there are simple solutions that cost less money that can be implemented more easily on a wider basis. So I would appreciate getting followed.
But I mean, I might not be the right person to answer this, but I believe this is part of the countermeasures implementation plan. So this does opposite of what the other one does. So this is part of a precautionary countermeasure. But the other thing is, I'm sure the other entrance sign is actually much more convenient. And that is a very good point. I can suggest to them. I will follow up that, and I will send you an email back.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you.
Any other questions from here in the room? Other questions from those that are attending virtually? I'm sorry, Rick Brennan, did you have a question? No, just scratching my nose.
I see Rick Richmond and Christina Costa.
Christina?
Yes, this is Rick, and this is to the chair and Rich to talk to you that I'll be abstaining from Amendment 15 as employee of Tampa Electric.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick,
Yes.
I'm going to have to get you a voting conflict form so that we can make that official.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Christina, did you have a comment?
Thank you. Yes. My question, thank you, Vishaka. This is all good information. For kind of following in the footsteps that Amy put out with the question about what kind of lights. I was going to ask you if this coincides with our Vision Zero high crash corridors, but you already said that it does. So I'm very happy to hear that. The lighting, it's very different lighting to illuminate roadways versus a lower elevation of lighting that actually casts light where pedestrians and bicyclists and other humans might occupy the space. So I'm wondering what, I'd like to be sure that we have lighting that is appropriate and corresponds to the types of crash avoidance that we are trying to accomplish with this. Thank you.
Yes, Christina, thank you for bringing that up. I did note that that question. So you are looking for two specific information, right? One is at the underpass and one is for pedestrians, bicyclists who are more vulnerable to that specific kind of crash. I will try to contact the project manager from FDOT and try to get that specific lighting information for you. And I will coordinate with Rich to send you that information. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Which I don't see any hands. So.
Thank you all.
Either.
So Rich, do we have a voting on this?
I'm
Yes.
sorry, this is Vivian. I had a
quarter.
Vivian, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was wondering if there were fatality statistics that these plans were based on, either for the wrong way drivers. Do we have some statistics of the number of fatalities? And I guess for the lighting, it would be more of a projection, I'm assuming, that of what future crashes or fatalities could be avoided. Is there such a number or numbers?
Ms. Vivian, again, this is Vishaka, but as the tip amendment, we just received the request from FDOT. Such specific details regarding the project have to be verified from the FDOT staff member. I am not sure if there is anybody representing FDOT right now, but I'm just taking note of these questions, and I will get back this answer regarding the statistics. But as far as I know, all I receive is the information about the location, and what I have in the packet for you is all that I have to present today. I'm sorry about that, but okay. I can definitely get that information for you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering what we're getting for the amount of money that we're spending statistically, and what the projected return will be.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, I'm sure FDOT has a benefit cost estimate what they do, but I do not have that specific detailed information with me right now. But I will work on and I will get that for you. Thank you. I just asked the money to be. I just add the funds to be added. That's all the request I make today.
So, Vivian, are you asking about the lighting project or the wrong way detection?
I believe both.
Well, I was actually asking about both, but I would think for the wrong way detection, there's statistics on how many fatalities are related to the wrong way driving. For the lighting, I'm assuming that it's more of a projection of what the crash and possible fatalities would be saved by these lighting adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I will try to get that information and I'll send it to you as soon as I get it.
Any further questions on these three? Rich, are there any hands raised that you're aware of?
I don't see any, sir.
All right. We had discussion. We have three proposed amendments. If it's the pleasure of the committee, we can vote on them as a group. Does anyone object to voting on all three one time? Do I hear a motion to approve all three of the TIP amendments? So moved. Made a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Hollenkamp made a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Cheryl, please call the roll.
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
White Prindle,
Aye.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Vivian Handy,
No.
Artie Fryer, Ed Murjewski,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas, Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilo Soto, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Nicole Rice, Rick Richmond,
Abstain.
Letitia Walker, Alexis Boback. Motion passes 12-1. Vivian Handy, a no.
Yes. Boyd, you have a question?
No, for Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick.
Yes, thank you. To Rich via the chair, is Rich's abstention applicable to all three of the amendments or only one?
Rick Richmond, did you abstain to all three or only to one?
So the motion was for all three, but I'm abstaining from amendment 15. So if that can be reflected in the record, and then I would vote yes for the other two. I'm okay with that. But I don't know procedurally how it was presented in the motion.
Subject to Rich Clarendon's ruling on procedure, will accept you as having voted yes on two of the amendments and abstaining from one.
I think we can reflect it in the minutes that Mr. Richmond abstained from voting on Amendment
15. Yep.
Thank you, members of the committee. Our next item is the Plant City Transit Plan. I think Shaka is going to present this one as well.
Yes, hang on just a second, please. I'll bring
Sure.
that up.
Moving too quickly for you.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon, all. Can I start?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes. For the record, this is Vishaka Shivaraman, MPO staff. Rich, can we move on to the next slide, please? I'm in front of you presenting the overview of the Plant City Transit study today. The study, we initiated the study back in January of 2020, and currently in November, we are winding up the study, and by December, we hope to be presenting it to the board. Next slide, please. I would like to give you a quick background and update about what the study was initially, why the study was taken. The study was undertaken as part of a request by Plant City and HART to study the feasibility of implementing a transit service in Plant City. As you all know, that Plant City is one of the fastest growing areas with currently over 40,000 residents and projected to become double in the next 25 years. The major corridors are Collins Street, Park Road, Alexander Street, Reynolds Street, and Baker Street. Next slide, please. The study purpose, as I had mentioned before, we're trying to explore the transit options for Plant City. In essence, we are trying to look at two different options. One is a transit circulator within the downtown Plant City, and one is an express limited option route to connect to Tampa and possibly to Lakeland in the future. This study evaluates alternative routes based on cost, potential ridership, and performance measures. We try to identify to see which areas are currently growing and the existing conditions, and to see what areas needs in the future. At the end of the study team will recommend a set of proposed alternatives to be presented to all the boards, including Plan City, HART, and MPO. Next slide, please. This is just to give you a quick update about what I had mentioned earlier. We started the study in January, and we did 3 stakeholder meetings at different points of time. One was an initial meeting, a second meeting, and a final meeting with the public open house. And currently we are in November, and I'm presenting to the committees. And in December, we will try to present to the board with a transit study final report. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. As part of the analysis, we looked at the existing conditions, and we tried to look at what transit service existed in the past to understand what worked and what can be made better for the future. As you all might be aware, that Plan City was served by 2 different types of transit services at different points of time in the past. The first one is a Strawberry connector, and if you notice in the map towards the right, it was served by 4 different sets of routes operated on 4 different quadrants of downtown Plan City. The highest annual ridership was for about 47,000 in 2006-07, and the service was operated from 2001 to 2008. Half of the time was by HART, and Plan City took over for the later part of the ridership. The second type of service, what was existing, was the 28X East County Express, which was an express route. In the map, it is shown as a yellow line, and it stopped right outside of the city at Tonotosasa at Mount Zion Church, and it was a park and ride location, and it provided service to Tampa. Currently, the only existing route is a Citrus connector, which operates in Lakeland. Next slide, please. In looking at the existing conditions, we observed the commuting characters to understand what worked for the people and what they need. Next slide, please. So for this, we looked at the commute patterns and the zero-car households. We understood that 84% of the workers drive alone with a mean travel time of 23 minutes. And roughly 18% of the residents live within 10 minutes of workplace. And currently 1.5% of households in Plan City have no vehicle. So what that means is these people might be more in need of a transit service. The map on the right shows the zero-car households. The darker colors, what you see towards the center of the downtown, are households with, are more percentage of households with zero car, and these might be the people who are at a transit disadvantage. We also looked at the communities of concern, what the MPO developed. That map shows people who belong to one of the 5 categories, either low income, minority, racial, limited English proficiency, or one of those categories who might be at a disadvantage. And we noticed that this map almost overlaps with the other map. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Currently, only the Sunshine Line operates service in Plan City, and the map shows the origins and the destinations what are served by Sunshine Line. It can be seen that most of the riders they have to be qualified to be eligible for Sunshine Line, and most of the trips are for medical purposes, grocery shopping, and other daycare and community centers. So these are the people who are who would most benefit if there was a transit service. Next slide, please. As part of the study, a majority of the part was towards outreach efforts. And as I had mentioned earlier in the schedule, there were 3 sets of meetings, and I will explain to you them in the next slide. The first meeting we had back in February 2020 at Plan City City Hall. It was a meeting to identify the stakeholder group who might be interested in giving their feedback, and we also helped to identify the challenges and benefits of transit. providing a new transit service. We also looked at it was based on a workshop model with breakout sessions, and it helped to identify the communities of concern, where the existing routes are and where the future growth is. The second meeting was back in May 2020. However, due to COVID-19, we had to do a virtual format. And this was like a midpoint of the study where we presented a set of alternatives, and based on public feedback and the stakeholder feedback, we also gathered an extra survey, which was well reached. It reached over 120 people, and it helped to narrow down to some of the alternatives. The third meeting was a virtual open house format. It was more like a public meeting. And if you notice on the map, on the photo on the right side, it is a screenshot of how the virtual open house was looking like a workshop format. And the public, every page had different information pertaining to the different routes and the options. And the public could get feedback on, they could provide their feedback on the different alternatives. This was hosted virtually, and there was also a presentation, and the workshop ran for 3 weeks from August 24th to September 13th. We also tried to distribute flyers at Plan City through the libraries and grocery stores, and it also had a lot of feedback. Next slide, please. So this is the main part of the study, the alternatives analysis. There were 2 sets of alternatives. Next slide, please. As part of the outreach, we developed, based on the feedback from the stakeholder and the public, there were 3 sets of goals which we identified. One is to implement useful and reliable service for the people who are in need of it the most. The second one was to incentivize downtown development using transit. And the third one was to connect to Tampa and Lakeland in the future. Next slide, please. I will be going over the circulator and the limited options one by one. So the circulator alternatives. Next slide, please. This is the basic assumptions what we use for estimating the cost. We just assumed that it's a normal regular bus with 600K capital cost. An additional 12% paratransit cost was also there. This would operate every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the downtown core. Please note that all costs are planning level estimates, and additional route analysis would require in-depth analysis by HART and Plan City. Next slide, please. The map on the right shows the different circulator alternatives options that we analyzed. The one in the red is option A, which is almost similar to some of the 2 routes that were operated by the Strawberry Connector, what I had mentioned earlier. It was a combination of 2 of the most popular routes, and it connects west from Strawberry Festival grounds, comes through downtown, and comes south all along Redmond Parkway to the Walmart on the south, and takes a jog and connects back as a loop. It is operated by 1 bus every 60 minutes. The second option almost splits the first option into 2. One is on the west side of the downtown, and one is the north-south of the downtown. So it covers more area, but it also is more frequent because it's operated by 2 different buses. Next slide, please. This is the cost comparison, what we used to use as a performance measure. If you notice that the operating cost and the paratransit cost I had mentioned earlier, the frequency for the second route is almost double that of the first route, and the travel time is also less. It also connects to more people. It provides more jobs. It accesses more jobs. And all the half-mile radius are the buffer, what we use to calculate the communities of concern. That is the percentage of people in poverty, minorities, seniors, or people with 0-car households. Next slide, please. On top of this, we also analyzed an option C, which is an on-demand service, because from one of our meetings, we realized that there was some interest towards some kind of a smaller service which operates point-to-point. So this came as an option, and we used Downtowner in Tampa as the case study. Currently, this is operated by HART, but it is provided by a funding received for HART. So it provides, the operating cost is $1.6 million per year, and a cost of roughly $5 per passenger borne by HART. It is operated with a app, and you can hail the car. It is only a 15-minute waiting time average. Next slide, please. After the circulator options, I would like to move on to the limited stop alternatives. Next slide, Rich. Again, the assumptions are the same as what we had assumed earlier with the capital cost. Each route would be operated by 2 buses, one from Plant City side and one starting from Tampa side. It operates Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from Saturday to Sunday to 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, these are all planning level cost estimates, so we do not have any detailed route estimate. Next slide, please. This map is what shows all the 5 routes in the same map. So this will kind of help you to understand how each route looks like. The first route is route, okay, I will pick the first route as the route 28X, which is the same as the previous service, which is shown in blue line. And it operates from Mount Thunotosassa Road outside of Plant City outskirts, connecting all the way through I-4, Selman Parkway, and then connecting to downtown Tampa. The second option is one that operates along I-4, and it connects from Tampa to Plant City via I-4 corridor. Similarly, the other route is the red route operates along MLK, and it operates to Mango, where there is a transfer station, and from there it connects to Tampa. So that does connect to more locations. If you can see that there are multiple stops along the route, and some of them are transfer centers. The route which is shown in the brown color is what came out of another outreach meeting, that it connects from Tampa to Plant City via MLK, and another one is a combination of this is a combination of some of the other routes. The route 38, which is shown in purple, currently operates from the Net Park transfer station to the Mango Walmart. From there was a proposal for extending that line to Plant City. So the route 38 would be an extension of the route 38, which is currently operating. So that's a smaller route. And we can move on to the next slide, please, Rich. Yes, so this is the main route, and this is the main table which shows the cost comparison of all the 5 routes that I mentioned earlier. The first one is the 28X, which is the old connection, the I-4, MLK, and then a combination of an I-4 plus MLK, and the 5th one is a Route 38 extension. If you notice that the costs are pretty much the same, each one is operated by 2 buses, and the costs vary from $950 to $1.25 million. The times are also roughly the same. The distances are also roughly, except for the extension route, all of them are pretty much the same, similar distances. Some of the routes do serve more people, some of them serve more jobs, but at the same time, this helps us to understand which route favors connectivity versus reaching more people, and how does it provide transit service for the transit disadvantaged people. So based on this, we can, this is just to help to understand that some of the routes might be longer, more expensive, but might serve more communities of concern and transit disadvantaged people compared to the other routes. With this, can we move on to the next slide, please? The 5th alternative, the 6th alternative, what we analyzed was a Plant City Lakeland connection. Because this was not part of the study, we just roughly used US 92 MLK as the route. This would make a stop at Amazon Distribution Center on County Line and connect to downtown Lakeland at one of the Red Line Citrus Park connection hubs. Next slide, please. This is again to show you the cost estimate for this connection. It is comparatively cheaper, but it serves only less people and less jobs. Further analysis of this route would require coordination with the Citrus connection and HART. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons what we learned from the outreach meetings were that The people were in general supportive of the transit connection, and they felt that it would open up more opportunities for jobs, tourism, and destinations. But there was a challenge about providing reliable service versus coverage, and how to get the people's perspective, change the people's perspective about transit. However, we noticed that most of the people were driving alone to work, and they would prefer transit as an alternative, and they would desire again, these are all the points which came out of the survey and feedback. So I'm just highlighting the feedback. The people prefer having a transit plaza for a connection, which could connect to the downtown circulator and the limited stop options. But how the stops would require more facilities, comfortable facilities and waiting times, and shorter, more frequent services. The current development pattern, we understood based on the transit land use and density portion that transit would be supported with the current development pattern. However, we need more frequency. If we need more frequency, we need more density to support that. And that would require policy decisions and jurisdictions to get involved. The more frequent trips within Plant City were for the shopping plaza and for the medical appointments in general. And for the express route, people preferred Tampa downtown as the most frequented location, followed by the airport, Brandon, and USF area. Also, I did mention earlier that Lakeland there was a lot of interest towards providing some service for Lakeland, and that's why we explored that additional option. With this, I think that's all I have to present for you, and I can take any questions. Rich, thank you. I see a lot of hands. I think Dr. Majewski.
Yeah, I just was curious on the limited stop services. Did you consider park and ride locations?
Yes, we did. One of the route options that was mentioned was exactly the same one as the previously operated Route 28X, which was a stop off Tonota-Sasa Highway at Mount Zion Park and Ride location. But that would be outskirts of Tampa. So I would like to provide that disclaimer that it doesn't connect to a hub. If that would be an option, it would have to have further connection from there to the other circulator or the other hubs.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Brindle, you have a question?
Yes, would you mind going back to the map slide for a second?
Sure. Would you be specific which slide you're looking for, please?
I don't know what number it is. It's the one that has different color
coded.
Okay,
I think, Rich, it's the limited stop options towards the end. Rich, can you please go back to that slide? One before this, the one before this. Yes, is this the one?
All right, so yeah, you were just on it.
Yes.
Okay, so the 28X is the existing service. All of these are the new proposed service routes. I just want to be clear about that.
No, none of them are existing. Currently, there is no transit service towards to Plant City. This was one of the routes that existed in the past, but it was closed in 2017 when Hart had the COA, the Comprehensive Operation Analysis, and they decided this was first as there were two routes, 2 stops in the morning and 2 in the evening, and then it was scaled back to 1, and finally they had to cut it back. So there is currently none. These are all the 5 proposed alternatives, but the only thing is Route 28X was one of the service which was previously operated. So we use that as a base point to analyze.
And then if you would go just to the next slide, please, and have the chart of the different population per month. So do we know, because the old 28X route has the number of people within a quarter mile is significantly higher than any of the other routes. Is that essentially being driven by the route, the old 28X route going through Brandon? I mean, I guess the reason I want to be clear about that is because to me, right, if we're just talking about Plant City, it seems to me that you have one route that was previously used and all the new routes are 60% less in terms of the population within a quarter mile, where the folks that are most likely to be walking to a bus station and potentially going to use the bus. that's a little bit concerning to me with that steep of a drop off between what the old 28X route and all the new proposed routes are. But I suspect that may be driven just because the old route went through Brandon. Do we know that by chance?
If I'm understanding correctly, you were trying to find out why we did not just use the 28X and why did we come up with the other routes? Is that what you were thinking about?
No, let me try to be clear in my question. My main concern with the 4 proposed routes is that the number of people within a 1/4 mile of the route are all, at least more than half, in some cases quite a bit more than 28X route. And typically that 1/4 mile metric is important, right? Because people are, can walk to the bus station. And so I'm just thinking in terms of trying to be effective for Plant City. Do we know if perhaps the 28X number skewed a little bit because it went down 75 and through Brandon, whereas the way I view these new proposed routes, they don't really go down through that stretch. So I just want to make sure I'm having an accurate comparison, because on face, it's a little concerning that there's a drastic drop off in the number within a 1/4 mile. So that's kind of what I was hoping to clarify.
Yes, thanks for the question. I do not know who it is, so I cannot address. But thank you for the question. Actually, this metrics is directly pulled out of the tool what HART uses for route purposes. So if it is an application that HART has developed, it's called Remix app. And if you put a buffer and draw a route, this is what it exactly pulls out based on, I think it's based on the census data. So this is as of existing today, which doesn't mean that some of the areas, if you remember that when we talked about at the areas of future growth, some of these routes did see an increase in the number of people, but that wouldn't mean we do not have that level of detailed analysis as to where the stops we are planning and where exactly the bus would stop. But based on the number of people currently today and and expected in the future, we just use these corridors because I-4 and MLK are the only other 2 comparison corridors which connect Lakeland, which connect Plant City to Tampa. So we just use those for our route and purposes. And the other one, the I-4 MLK, is a combination of both routes. So it was just developed based on what are the most frequented routes, or what are the only existing roads to connect Tampa to Plant City. And the existing, the Route 28 extension would be an extension of the current route. So that only means that if you notice that the distance is very less, so that would only serve the additional number of people along that corridor. But this is direct number what came out of the census number. I will double check to see if there was any mistake, but I do not suspect anything.
Okay, thank you.
I do see Stephen Hollenkamp's hand. I do see Amy Spiosa.
Stephen Hollenkamp, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Vishaka, I just want to thank you for putting this report together. It feels like the routes are thoughtful. And also, basically, every route goes right by my house in Plant City. So thank you for hooking me up. That's why you did it. I got 2 questions. One is, the Plant City to Lakeland route is a route I really believe could, while it has less people that could use it, I think they have a high percentage of people, less people that could use it, but a higher percentage of people that actually do use it. Because I think it's a frequently traveled route. But I think it makes sense, especially if we can get Lakeland to pay for another bus. Then we have 20-minute headways. We got double the buses, and we wouldn't have to pay for it, or would. I'm wondering if we have spoken to Lakeland or Polk County and just gauge their interest, if they're at all interested or open. And then the next thought is, one of the major routes in Plant City goes, the destination is the Strawberry Festival. And I can imagine in surveys, a lot of people would be like, Strawberry Festival, especially people that don't ride the bus a lot now. They would think that's a time when they definitely would want to. But the Strawberry Festival is 2 weeks long, so it's a really important route during that 2 weeks. But the other 50 weeks, it's like 30 acres of vacant lot. And so just something to, I don't know if you guys factor that in. Then lastly, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about why, the idea of just starting with vans or a van to gauge interest, and once you get a van packed out, then maybe upgrade to a bus. So I'm wondering, how you guys think about going to a van first as a first step, just in general as a how you guys think about it as an MPO.
Thank you, Stephen, for all the questions. I believe you have heard some of this presentation before also, right? I will start with the first question. For the Lakeland route, there was a lot of interest, probably because the kind of stakeholders we had, some of them represented the Polk County District 1 from FDOT, Lakeland, and Citrus Connection. So that was why there was a lot of interest. However, the Lakeland route analysis was not part of the HART, because HART and MPO were the co-project managers, and because it's outside the Hillsborough County boundary, we only did that for a comparison purpose. We did not go into any in-depth analysis for what other route options could come from there. But since people requested that, we thought it would be a good option to explore that. So to kind of give you an understanding of how we can make the complete connection from Tampa to Lakeland in the future. So that would be something which has to be explored later, along with and more involvement with Lakeland and Citrus Connection. The second question, the Strawberry Festival, also, yes, you're partly correct. Maybe the survey did lead to a lot of interest in Strawberry Connection, in the Strawberry Festival grounds. But I do notice that there are schools, and isn't the new community center close to that area, if I'm correct? No, okay. Okay. This was, sorry, the Strawberry Connection was actually one of the destinations for the earlier Strawberry Express buses. So we kind of use that. I did mention in one of the slides that there were two routes we used for the circulator. One would be connecting, because there is some future development plan for the northeast part of the Plant City, but that is only in the future, and we do know where the development is coming. But we use kind of the existing growth patterns and the percentages to kind of do the route planning. But these all came out of the stakeholder meeting. We did hand them over plain maps, and we marked these routes at some of the stakeholder meetings. So that's how we did the route analysis. But you are correct that the other times of the festival, there would be not much ridership there. But those are things which would need further analysis by HART. If they were to take one of these routes, they would have to do more public outreach efforts to do the detailed planning and the routes. The third question for the van, we did have this question also come up earlier, but the cost involved for a van versus a full-size bus would be pretty much the same. So we talked about this with HART, and HART might be able to give you the specific details of what the cost difference would be. So but I do not have those numbers, but they all were very similar. And if a regular bus, and it will also be, if it were a van, it would have to be having other specifications, and we would have to purchase more buses per se for that specific kind of different bus service. Whereas this could be operated with existing buses. But all these being said, none of these are final bus, final cost, final service or anything. These all would come out only based on what funding options would be there in the future and how we can fund them and what would be the actual routes. So these are just the costs thrown out to you to give you an understanding of if we could make this as a actual service in the future, what would be the different costs?
Thank you, Vishaka.
Thank you.
Amy Espinoza has a question.
Yes, my question is around the workshops. What was your average rate of participation, and how many of those people were from areas, from communities of concern? Do you know?
Yes, Amy. So for you mean the public workshop? We did have two parts of the survey. The first one was also publicly announced, and I would say that's again specifically that all these were advertised through social media and or through the different jurisdictions. Hart and Plan City advertised these, but the first public meeting was the stakeholder meeting was more per se by as stakeholders representing the different government organizations and the other. There were people from various other organizations and groups, including business owners. And the last part of the outreach, which would be the actual public workshop, was also advertised. We did try to distribute the flyers at some of our staff went out and handed flyers through the library and also through the I forget the name of the store, the meat market in Plant City, and some of the other grocery stores. We also handed out flyers at some of the laundromats. But it was mainly, we do not have that, that information was not disclosed by many of them. So we do not have a clear understanding of where the zip codes are from for the survey. If they chose to answer, we have that details. So we didn't use that as, a guiding factor to see if we targeted the communities of concern. But the flyers were distributed at specifically along some of these locations. Does that help too?
What was the average participation rate? So, like, how many people attended?
The attendees were roughly about 20 people, and we had survey filled out by about 30 people. But I would like to say that, again, the stakeholders survey, which we distributed back in May, was what had more reach. We got 120 responses for that, and that was what helped us to define some of these. The last one was just mainly to present these alternatives to a more public platform. Initially, when we had the meeting back in May, we thought we could go to a actual open house meeting around September, October, but unfortunately the situation did not change, so we could do only a virtual open house. So I would have to let you know that we did try to advertise on our social media, but the representation might not be a clear, the participation might not be a clear representation of who represented the communities of concern.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Rich, anybody have their hand up?
I don't see anybody in the virtual world with their hand up.
Mr. Fernandez.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to keep my mask on. If that changes, let me know. Okay, first question for you, Vishaka. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Your recommended action on the agenda item, you ask us to support the results of the study. I'm unclear as to exactly what that means. You just want us to tell you did a nice job and a nice presentation? Or is there some specific line item somewhere that you want us to say, yeah, we approve this, underscore it, and pass it on with a recommendation to the big board for approval?
Yes, so my request would be to support the study and recommend the results of the study to the MPO board for approval. I did mention to you that we are in the final phase of winding up the transit study report, but we just received a draft version of the report from the consultant. It is up on our website, and I can provide those details to you through Rich if you want to take a look at that report and see if the study holds value. That's whatever I presented today, plus other details are there in the final report. We have the results of the survey as appendix in the report as well. So that being said, my request would be to support the study and approve it to the and pass your recommendation to the board. Rich, is there anything else I need to ask for?
I'm sorry, was that question directed to me, Rick Fernandez? Rich Clarendon.
Vishaka, were you asking me or Mr. Fernandez?
I was asking Rich, I was asking you, Rich, is there anything else I need to ask? Because to answer Rick's question of what would be the action item, I would be requesting to recommend the study to the board for approval. Is there anything else I need to request?
No, the recommended action is to support the results and recommend it to the board for approval, like you said.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just going to tell you my feeling when you hear my vote later, unless something changes. I'm not at all clear at this point what it is I'd be recommending or supporting. So that is going to impact my decision on whether or not I would recommend or support the recommended action. That being said, I do have a couple of other questions, Chair, with your permission.
Please go ahead.
Plant City, I think 2-3 weeks ago, made a presentation to the Independent Oversight Committee regarding their transit plan, secondary to the surtax that we're all waiting to hear something about from the Supreme Court. That's a funding mechanism, as I know you know, and they presented to us along the IOC a plan with dollars attached to it. Is there overlap there somewhere, or are those two things, the transit plan submitted to the IOC under the surtax and what you're talking about here, are they just operating in two parallel universes, or is there some overlap there somewhere? I don't remember this kind of discussion at the IOC meeting.
I'll jump in. If I may.
Yes, please, Rich. I was having difficulty to address that answer because I'm not fully aware of the Independent Oversight Committee proposal for the surtax. So thank you, Rich.
Yeah, so this study was requested by Plant City, but it's not necessarily tied to the surtax.
Okay, so none of this funding is tied to the surtax. It'd be independent. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
None of the funding that would be necessary to move forward with the recommendations is tied to the surtax?
It is not necessarily tied to the surtax.
Okay. Let's see. There was a slide, I think it was under the outreach slide. The phraseology used was there was a goal to incentivize development. Are you with me, Vishaka?
Vishaka, are you there?
Sorry, I'm there. I was on mute, but I'm here with you. Sorry about that. Rich, it was one of the first slides to incentivize. These were the transit goals. I think it's slide 14. Yeah. Slide 14, the goals we developed based on the feedback from the stakeholder and the public meetings were these: to implement service, to incentivize downtown development, and to connect to Plan City. So the connection part is to provide mobility for all and access to the transit disadvantaged people. And the incentivized downtown was also another goal. The first goal is to provide communities of concern, transit, to serve transit to the people who are disadvantaged. Is there anything I need to clarify here, or was that a question?
Well, yeah, I'm just curious. All right, there's a goal to incentivize development. That's cool. I get that. But I'm just curious as to what there is in the plan that specifically does that other than laying a bus route out. I mean, is there some discussion taking place regarding, for instance, affordable housing, just to toss out one thought, mixed use development? Does the planning go beyond the word, I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay, I do get that. Thank you for clarifying that. The plan to incentivize downtown development is beyond the plan for the transit service, because the goals came out of the ideas from the stakeholders and Plan City that they needed these three things once they provide the transit, they wanted these three things to be fulfilled. But at the same time, the current density does not support, the current density in Plant City is there to conducive to transit, but it does not allow, it does not provide any further, sorry, I think I'm falling short of words. The current density does support transit, but it does not help to provide the incentive. It does not help to for economic development of downtown. So that would be a goal that would come if it's a two-part problem. Once there is service, some of the areas can be repurposed. We did find that, and it's more detail given in the report, because some of the challenges and the benefits would came out of this was it would help for more infill development. It would help to repurpose some of the uses. There is some existing proposal in the Midtown development, McCall Park. So all those areas could be incentivized if transit would serve these locations, which currently it does not. Does that help to qualify? Does that help to answer that question?
I heard you. One last question.
Sure.
Among your assumptions for the rolling stock, the one bus, $600,000. What kind of bus are we talking about?
It's the regular bus that Hart has. I don't know. I don't have the details of that. The bus which currently Hart operates. It is a regular non-electric bus, but I do not.
Point, if this helps. What is the fuel that we're talking about? Is it compressed natural gas or something else?
I would have to look at that specifications for that. I do not want to give the wrong answer. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Rich, do you have any intel?
I was going to say, I think that Vishaka could check with Hart, but I'm pretty sure they're trying to move away from diesel fleet and towards CNG and electric.
Well, that's
yes, that was my hope also, Rich, but I did not want to give an answer. But I do have a co-project manager from Hart, Nicole McCleary, so I can definitely get those details for you. And also one of the earlier questions about the van, I will get that, which Stephen Hollenkamp had asked me earlier. I'm going to get the cost of that actual operating cost and see if it matches with the bus. And I will get the details for the Hart type of bus as well for you.
Okay, and just kind of the last layer of that last question. The price point that you've indicated in the report per bus is $600,000. Understand, I don't go out shopping for buses personally very often, so I just know that when I've been in various meetings, the price point that I've heard quoted for a bus is more close to $1 million. So there's a delta there that is fairly significant. Maybe my understanding is off. Could you clarify that? If you don't know, maybe just drill in a little bit and check and see what Amazon is for something.
I'm sorry, what was it? Check. Did you say?
It's my feeble attempt at humor. I'm in a mask and I don't do well with a mask. The price point, 600,000. What I've understood is
yes, I will.
They're closer to $1 million. That delta, I want to just understand what the difference is there. Maybe it's just me being misinformed.
Yes, I think the base cost was what was the 600K. But so that being said, if there were two buses, it was 1.2 million, somewhere around that. And it was all pulled, like I said, it was just the basic statistics, what we got out of Hart's application, what they use for the route calculating purposes. But I will try to get the detail of the actual cost. It might be the cost as of today, but if Hart is moving on towards new types of buses, and if they are buying new buses, it might be a totally different cost. So I will try to find that information out for you and send it back to you as soon as I get an answer.
Thank you, Vishaka.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Yes, this is Artie Fryer. I have a question.
Artie, you're recognized.
All right, thank you. This is in regard, I think I've heard that there's some additional information in the broader report. What I'm curious about is, were you able to gain or do some projections in terms of the ridership that would be characterized as disadvantaged, and how would they benefit on these routes? Was that something that was factored in? And if it was, can you kind of briefly tell me how that was done and how we might take a look at that?
I believe you're asking about, Rich has a slide here which shows the statistics. Are you talking about, does this qualify as the disadvantaged people? If so,
Right,
yes, this is what
that's
the
what
number.
I'm in. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. So it's in,
Yes,
it's contained in the report?
Yes, it is. And this numbers come out of the application. It's called a Remix app, and this is what
Right.
HART uses to for their route calculation purposes. So we just input the map to and fro locations and the route, and then it pulls a buffer. It draws a buffer around the map for the half mile, and the statistics is what directly comes out of that map. These are not a projection number. This is what the actual number comes from based on the census data.
Okay. I think you mentioned that the report could be made available to us. I don't know how large it is or how practical that is, but I would, if we could access it, I think that would be useful.
Yes, I will coordinate with Rich. Yes, Rich, I do have it already on the project website. I will send you that information out as soon as I'm done with this meeting. And Rich, is it possible for you to distribute it to the committee members?
Actually, it's in your write-up. It's in the packet already. The link.
Okay. The link to the website, but the actual report, we did not get it at the time when this when the CAC packet was sent out. We just got the report as of Monday, and I do have it uploaded on the website. But please keep in mind that it is not a final version; it's a draft version. So we are going through the errors and something which needs to be fixed. So I do have the version for you to take a look, but you're more than welcome to read the report. I will send that. I don't know, Rich, if it is possible to send a PDF. It might be a larger file. So do you think there's any other way we can send it to them?
Again, I think the best way to access it is go directly to the link that's in the packet and access it that way, because it is a sizable file, and I don't think it will go through everybody's email necessarily.
Okay, Rich, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought so too. It is in the project documents towards the bottom of the page. And once it is completed and reviewed, I will upload the final version. But right now it would say a draft version.
Are there other questions from committee members on virtual members? Any hands, Rich?
I see none.
I'm going to be willing to take a motion on this action. I have some comments. First of all, I have a business in Plant City, so I do know a little bit about it. I'm very supportive of improved transit in the Plant City area, both to and from and within. But Amy raised a valid question. I think the sample size was very small due to COVID, and I question the validity of the results of that sample size. I also continue to be suspect of numbers that we get from HART, because their response to the cost of a van versus the cost of a $600,000 bus just doesn't seem to jive with me. So I appreciate the study. Finally, I will have to say I'm still not clear exactly what we're recommending to the MPO board, who's going to make the selection between these various routes. So with those comments, I will entertain a motion on this action item.
Can I just jump in for a moment to clarify something?
Please do.
Yeah, so I don't know if this was made clear at the beginning, but HART asked us to do an analysis and provide some alternatives, but they did not ask us to recommend a particular alternative. This is going to go to the HART board, same type of presentation. So essentially what you're being asked to do is to endorse the findings, but not necessarily make a recommendation for any specific route, because I think, as Vishaka has made clear, that's going to be up to HART to decide.
Thank you, Rich. Seeing no further comments, is there a motion regarding this action item on the Plant City Transit Plan?
I'll pass a motion.
Hollenkamp made a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Robert Kennedy Gibson made a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Brennan?
Yeah, I would like to move to amend Mr. Hollenkamp's motion to say that we will pass this along with the caveat that the staff will come back and report on some of the issues that Mr. Fernandez raised in his discussion, and frankly the ones you raised, because I think those are important pieces of information that we should have access to, and frankly I could see us being asked later on to weigh in on some kind of route here. So I think my amendment would be to amend his motion with the caveat that we get the report back on the specific items that you, Mr. Kramer, requested.
Okay, we have a proposed amendment. Is there a second to Mr. Brennan's amendment? I'll second it. Thank you, Mr. Skelton, for seconding it. Any discussion on the amendment? The amendment is to recommend the action item with reservations, subject to getting further information as requested during the committee meeting. Correct. Okay, let's take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say, Cheryl, I'm sorry. Let's take a roll call vote.
Bill Roberts,
No.
Rick Fernandez,
No.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Aye.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa.
No.
Was that no?
Yes. No.
Thank you.
Correct.
Christina Costa,
No.
Vivian Handy, Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Ed Marczewski, David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
No.
motion carries 9-5, 5 noes. Bill Roberts, Rick Fernandez, Amy Espinosa, Christina Costa, and Rick Richmond.
I will now take a vote on the main motion. Amendment having failed, the motion is to recommend to the MPO board the results of the study with the actual implementation to be determined, I think, by the HART board. Let's take a vote, roll call vote, unless there is further discussion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Am I confused? I thought the amendment passed, not failed.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I misstated.
I just wanted that point clear.
You're absolutely correct. The amendment passed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry. If you could repeat that the motion passed and if you could.
Yes. Motion did pass. I misstated it. The motion to amend the main motion did pass. We'll now take a vote on the motion to recommend the study to the MPO board. Any further discussion on that item? Hearing none, if we'll have a roll call vote on the main motion to recommend to the board.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me.
Yes.
It's Christine. I do want to make a comment. I think I want to make sure I understand what I have heard through the course of the dialogue and the questions. When Mr. Fernandez asked for clarification about what does it mean to incentivize development downtown in Plant City, I think the question was, do we have a pairing yet of land use planning and the appropriate building codes such that we support the transit? And I think I understood that to be a gap. We have a transportation issue before us, but we do not have it married to the development, it being incentivized through land use. Do I understand that correctly?
Was that your understanding of the answer? Your question.
Boy, yeah, no, wish we could replay the tape. I think, Christine, if I may direct my answer to you specifically to the terrace.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think you captured the moment, and my concern was that there was not, to use your phrase, there was no pairing. The transit element is just sitting out there by itself with no consideration of the other issues, at least none that have been presented to us. And that was my concern. So I would support your interpretation.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I would like to make a motion that we do not recommend this without that pairing, because it feels a lot like just doing things the way we've done them for a while, where we have disjointed efforts to incentivize density that will support these lines. But if we don't have the framework from a land use perspective to grow the density, then the lines will be put out there, and I feel that they would be at risk or fail.
Christine, I think procedurally we have a motion on the floor, but you can't make a second motion.
Okay.
But if you, Rich, comment?
So you have not, you do have a main motion on the floor. I think, though, that it's within the right of any member to ask for an amendment to that motion before it's voted on. And currently, we have not voted on the main motion yet. So if Christine wanted to offer another amendment, I think that would be appropriate. Of course, it would have to be duly seconded and then voted on as an amendment first.
I was about to entertain from Christine an amendment.
Okay. All right, let me take a shot at this then. I make a motion that we amend the previous motion such that we postpone until we hear back what the land use pairing is that is also intended to incentivize density in Plant City downtown till for 30 days or till our next meeting.
We have a motion to postpone action on this item. Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing no second, the amendment fails.
I second that, and I apologize because I wasn't hearing everything clearly, but yes, I second Christine's.
Second. David Bailey made the second.
Yes.
Okay. We have an amendment and a second. Postpone action until we have clarification on pairing land use. Joe, let's take a roll call on this amendment as well.
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
No.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
No.
Hoyt Prindle,
No.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Vivian Handy, Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Ed Marjuski, David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
No.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
No.
9-5, motion carries. 5 noes. I have Rick Fernandez, Stephen Hollenkamp, Hoyt Prindle, Jeff Lucas, and Rick Richmond.
So the amendment we just passed was a motion to postpone action on this action item. Mr. President, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. How exactly does it work where we have a motion to pass? I mean, is this just amend the entire motion to say we're not going to move it along? I'd like to be clear about that. I want to make sure I'm not.
I think that's what the amendment does, yes.
So then do we even have to vote on the full motion now?
I'm not anticipating vote on the main motion. Okay, Rashida, thank you very much. We're going to take a break on this one and wait till we get further information.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, please.
Please, go ahead.
What are we actually expecting? Like, excuse me, are we clear on what we're expecting them to come back with? I just want to make sure. I understand there's a, marrying of the development along the route. Is that like the entire route, or?
I'll take a stab at interpreting what the request was, but even though I didn't make it. I think what we're looking for is to get some feedback as to whether or not some or all of these proposed routes are coordinated with land use plans for the Plant City area and the areas in between. That's the best I can do.
Yes, we're looking to have an answer specifically as it pertains to the objective of the study. One of the 3 objectives was to support development that is dense development in downtown Plant City. So that's, to me, that's the question we need an answer for.
Thank you, Christine. Any other questions on this one? Okay. The next action item on our agenda is the Vision Zero corridor study.
Okay. Let me do this. Let me pull up the presentation and then give control to Lisa.
Actually, I think I already did it. So if one would just confirm that you're seeing the PowerPoint slide.
Yes.
Okay. Yay, that was seamless. I love that. Okay.
Go ahead and introduce yourself if you would, Lisa.
I am. Okay. Okay, who wants to stretch? Man, that's been a long meeting so far. Ready for some energy? I'm Lisa Silva, Hillsborough MPO staff. And I'm one of 2 project managers on the Hillsborough County Vision Zero Corridors study. Just a little refresher, Vision Zero action plan had 4 tracks. This one does not focus on the other 3 as much as it does on the Paint Saves Lives, which is low cost engineering strategies that can be like quick fixes and immediately implementable. So which corridors we're studying? What happened was one of our commissioners at one of the budget reconciliation meetings had some funding, and they said, hey, let's take that and ask the MPO to partner with our Hillsborough County Public Works and Infrastructure Department and start tackling our top, as many corridors as we can. So we started to tackle the top Vision Zero high injury networks for Hillsborough County, and they're listed here. So what it is these are our corridors with the most serious injuries and fatalities. And so, like I mentioned, both Hillsborough County and the MPO have been developing this with support from our consultant team. It's the first time that the recently adopted Speed Management Action Plan is being put to work. I would like to remind everybody that you're going to see a lot of specific recommendations, but this is a planning study. Some of them are going to require further data and evaluation, and some will get refined in the implementation. So with every project, we always seek public input into it. We, like the Plant City study you just saw, had the challenge of COVID. So what we did is develop fact sheets for every single corridor, and we went out and physically distributed them along the corridor. So here you see Wanda at a bodega, we have a drive-up window, barber shops, anywhere we could, especially when we were targeting our communities of concern to get that equitable participation. We did our constant contact e-blast of the surveys and the fact sheets, directing everybody to our Plan Hillsborough website, which the Vision Zero Corridors page was the link, and then promoted it significantly on social media. Many of you saw the presentation in its initial existing conditions outreach design in September. Thank you very much for the feedback and helping us promote it. I know that it did make a difference. So again, here's the look and feel of some of those flyers and the survey distribution. Okay, the first corridor we're going to cover is Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. It's from Fowler up to Bierce Avenue to the north. So it's in the university area. So a portion of that corridor is urban general and another is suburban commercial. So you'll see the recommendations adapt and adjust to the different contexts. It's a little under 2 miles long. It's one of our more intense corridors. We studied it 6 lanes wide. It's got a 45 miles speed limit and quite a bit of traffic on it. And it's got 4 HART routes along it, and then the university transit option traverses the corridor as well. So as we shared previously, we have the crash data showing the different types of crashes. In Bruce B. Down, we have 60% of them are at nighttime. So you'll see the reaction to that is like some lighting solutions. The types were a lot of the side swipe and the angle and some left turn. And then our, you can see here the trend is that our bike and ped crashes are not trending down like we would like to see them. Here I've highlighted the locations of the corridors and some special projects that complement this study. So Fowler Avenue, not so surprising that that's where the most significant amounts of them are. You'll see later that we are complementing an FDOT project in this location. These two are, and this one are county projects that we've learned along the way that they're doing a traffic signal at Campus Hill Drive and at Richard Silver Way. So these 2 new signals are in those concentrations where we have lots of apartments and residential, and the students are free flowing across the road, trying to direct and control that a lot better and improve those intersection facilities. And then I thought this was excellent news here from for a segment of this corridor. They're widening the to a 10-foot sidewalk on the east side and widening the existing one so that we have a new sidewalk and an existing sidewalk and a 7-foot physically separated bike lane on both sides. So we're gonna have a little cycle track option there. So what did the public say when we went out? Unfortunately, we just got 26 participants when we did the distribution. This was a tough area to get feedback response, but what they did say is that there's a lot of aggressive driving and they're driving too fast. So 28% said that. We have the turning movements along the roadways and into the businesses is a challenge, and walking and biking across the corridor, as I mentioned before, is one of the challenges to adapt to. So there's some spot and specific recommendations, which I'll hit next, but each of these corridors, we have some corridor-wide recommendations. The whole corridor, as mentioned, is 45 miles per hour. So we would like to see us start to implement some things that allow us to get a target speed of 35 miles per hour on the more urban southern section, and then transition to a 45 mile per hour target speed on the northern portion. And then we have some drainage swales along the different sides, and then some of the roadway is designed where we have just ponding all the time. So fixing those as we go along would make it safer for all of the users. And then signing and pavement markings, definitely completing the different crosswalks with high emphasis. There's a lot of ramps and sidewalk situations that are not ADA compliant, so for sure we want to get that done. And then the older style traffic signal poles and stuff need some new facilities added to them. I mentioned lighting was a problem, and so upgrading the lighting along the corridor, and then fixing the signalized intersections and bringing them up to best practices, giving them the pedestrians a little head start as they cross the road with the leading pedestrian intervals, the push button activated so they don't have to just sit there forever and just be tempted to run across the road. And then the reflective back plates. So, and then spot treatments along the corridor. So Bierce has got a pretty significant and fast free flow curve up here. So we'd like to enhance that safety. North of the corridor, they have the multi-use trail up there. So connecting that and extending the ability to get on and off that facility to the south, fixing the geometry to reduce the speed at these turning dangerous areas. Okay, so then a new pedestrian crossing at Grand Pavilion Drive, high emphasis crosswalks, a place there at 138 Fletcher, bulb out extension, so that you can, like, that's a big, wide, long, crossing area that would help that. And then improving the direction where the pedestrians are supposed to go to cross. Drainage judges, okay. All right, we're hitting the highlights if you haven't caught on to that. These are very in-depth, detailed reports that are on the website and were linked in your packet. Today, we're trying to be onerous of your time and how long these meetings go, so we're just hitting the highlights. So I'm talking very fast, sorry about that. So moving on to Fletcher, we have its high crash corridor locations that we identified. The types were rear end and angle in both the total crashes and the severe crashes. So in particular, 26 severe crashes, 31 bike ped crashes along this corridor. So it's got a different feel. It's a 4-lane roadway instead of 6-lane. So again, adjusting to the context and the issues along the corridor. What we heard from the community is that it's volume, speed, and access. Those are their top safety concerns. You'll see that our recommendations address that. Again, corridor wide things, speed management, targeting 35 again on this one. Attempting to adjust the signal timing and phasing along the corridor to make the traffic behave to that targeted speed. Adding some flashing yellow arrows so that you don't just have permissive green where they don't look ahead for the pedestrians. That helps provide some safety. The lighting, you can see how dark it is here. And then here's a little example of those reflective back plates. You can see how much easier they are to discover in the nighttime. Definitely crosswalks and the sidewalks and all that stuff need maintenance. And the raised medians were one of our ways to help with the safety and the access and directional stuff. So you can see those here. We've got these for the whole corridor, but I'm just showing you one where we had crashes and where we had issues. We're doing a raised median, just a small one, and you can see how we're applying those improved turn lanes and the little refuges for the pedestrians. This corridor identified a potential new signal at OLA. All new signals have to go through a warrant study. So that's one of those examples where we require additional studying, reducing the radii to make a shorter crossing distance and slowing the vehicles that are turning. Now we're stepping into Lynn Turner Road, and it's a lot different because it's pretty residential. You can see here in the aerial that we got a lot of just single family homes, even some green space along the corridor. It's 2 lanes and it's 1.5 miles long. It also has a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit, but a lot lower volume, so you can kind of just move pretty fast when you have low volume and high speeds. Typical locations for the top crashes, and the same type of vehicle crash, the same type of crash in this corridor. Top safety concerns, again, that the community is telling us that it's too fast and that they have unsafe turns and poor lighting. So again, our corridor-wide things involve speed management techniques and adding that lighting that's been missing. A lot of the side streets didn't have the amenities on them, so adding some crosswalks on them, and then wider sidewalks. This corridor has a very narrow sidewalk. It's like, I believe, 4 feet wide, so it's a little uncomfortable, especially when you don't have on-road bicycle facilities. So some other specific ones. Here we have a big kind of weird draining situation and difficulty. So we were like, let's bring that curb a little tighter or make that a little more workable. We have a school down the road, so enhancing and adding those medians there will help the pedestrian crossings on that corridor. Now we'll take you down the road to Sheldon, and it's from Hillsborough Avenue to Waters Avenue is the segment that's the high injury network. So here you can see the locations of the crashes and their frequency. And the majority of the crashes occurred mid-block and on the side streets on this corridor. They have many side streets. It's a 2-mile segment, but they have 28 intersections along it and 24 bus stops. So there's a lot of interaction, but only 4 marked crossing locations. So imagine that. 4 for the whole corridor, but you have 28 intersections. So that's what a lot of the theme is on this one. Then we also discovered that fatalities are occurring off peak. Not surprising. Sheldon's a big, wide, straight roadway, so it feels comfortable to go fast when it's not congested. Okay, so the community input, what do they say? Well, 44% of the respondents in this case said speeding was the issue. So, you think they like to go fast, but really they get that that's not going to make them feel safe. Because you can see up here in our question where we asked, how do you feel along Sheldon? You would kind of maybe guess, because they have a very minimally wide bike lane. It's maybe substandard. That biking and walking might feel unsafe, but no, even the drivers, like 3 was the highest star rating for how you felt safe along the roadways. So, okay. Some of the systematic improvements for this corridor is adding the high visibility crossings, reducing the curb radii again. Again, those bike lanes are really hard to know that they are bike lanes because they're so narrow. So adding some green paint in the high emphasis areas will help make it very clear that, oh, there's another mode maybe to be sharing the roadway with. These are the same as some of the other corridors, so I'll take you into some of the more specifics. We even, like in the report, we divided the countermeasures up into types. So things that are like operational, like the speed radar feedback signs, the push button returns, the traffic light signals and stuff, but then we save streets. So those are the design things like the curb radii and the street trees, and then the safe people. We've got our bus stops and our shade and the crossings. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. And so I'm going to hit a couple of the highlights along the corridor. So down south up here is Hillsborough Avenue. So Hillsborough and Sheldon and Memorial, big nightmare, but it's DOT's nightmare. So we moving north, we have this other kind of weird situation where we have Old Memorial coming in at an angle and a curve. We have a Publix here, we have 7-Eleven here, and a shopping center here. But then look at this, you can even see the pavement patterns where everybody's just kind of cutting through and doing these shoot across the roads. And that's a big wide road to be shooting across as these very fast moving cars come down. So redesigning that to prevent those type of turns. Sheldon, unlike many of the other corridors, has a big wide median and several street shade trees along it. We'd like to encourage more of those. Having that consistent vertical shade and pattern and trees along there will help calm and slow the traffic. They're big wide medians, but they're not designed for any mode except the cars. You can see how, if you're coming along the sidewalk, then you're just you're out in the middle of nowhere to try to get across. And we have that ongoingly down the corridor. So the yellow striping is to extend and give refuge. And again, make this a little tighter. You have to be a little more thoughtful instead of just flinging your car around those corners. We have the Upper Tampa Bay Trail crossing here. When we were out in the field, we identified that this is timed inappropriately. It's timed like it's a full traffic stop. So it's very easy for the drivers to get impatient and just blow through it because it doesn't take that long for a human to cross the road. So, and it's a little hard to know that there's this great asset along the corridor. So we're recommending additional signage and directional so that people can get along there. We have 2 schools along the corridor, and the school zone is designed in the old standards. It needs to be brought up to Florida statutes. So we recognize that. We also discovered a second school across the street. So we communicated with our partners at the county about making sure that that gets extended to recognize both school zones. And then the last major things is we have 2 new traffic signals. Again, I mentioned there's only 4 crossings the whole corridor, so we're recommending 2 signals and 3 pedestrian signalized crossings and improvements to the intersections. So that will complete my thing, and I'll let Wade take over.
Good afternoon, CAC. I'm waiting for my screen to come up here. 1 second. Hopefully that will do it. All right. I'm not sure.
You got it.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. All right. So starting with Wade Reynolds, MPO staff, starting with 78th Street, which is a two through lanes in either direction, plus a center turn lane from Palm River Road to Madison. We have proposed a number of safety improvements, mostly quick fixes, including hardscape medians, relocating some transit stops, pedestrian refuge islands, street and in-street lighting, and some pedestrian countdown signals as well, which I will go through here. Excuse me, if I can.
Wait, it's Rick Fernandez.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I didn't pay my streaming fee this month, but I'm not getting your picture on the screen.
Apologies. 1 second. Let me see if I can.
Sheet on the chair if I need to. He's got them, but I don't. Are you center?
And it does say I'm sharing it,
Yeah.
but I
When I showed up, so I don't know. Don't worry about it. I'll cheat on Bill. That's okay.
Okay.
Don't.
Well, moving forward, we do, so looking at just one of those hotspots, Palm River Road, a lot of those crashes are distraction related. It was a third of all crashes on the on the entire corridor. So improving the intersection geometry, improving the street lighting, and evaluating the sight distances and tightening up the radii where possible are some of the countermeasures proposed there. I mentioned relocating some bus stops before. What you see here is the combination of a reduction of the speed limit from 45 to 35, narrowing of the travel lanes, adding a rapid flashing beacon mid-block crossing and a refuge island. That would be a two-stage rapid flashing beacon crossing. Relocating the bus stop to be closer to the opposing bus stop so that people, if they're crossing the street, would not have to walk down the street, or they would not be incentivized to cross where there was not a safe crossing. And in midterm, we've also proposed the reconstruction and widening of sidewalks, as well as bringing those up to ADA and enhancing street lighting. This is just a couple of examples of many islands and rapid flashing beacon crossings, similar locations to what we can see on 78. Moving on to Gibson Drive and Boyette Road, the short-term goal is to reduce the speed limit from 45 to 40 miles an hour. That is accomplished through, number one, narrowing the travel lanes to provide an expanded outside buffer and reduce or make it feel like you're going faster with the skinnier lanes. Filling in the sidewalk gaps and providing crosswalks and ped signals at all of those crossings. Extending median separators at intersections where feasible to provide a refuge for pedestrians. Converting these permissive left turns at signals to restricted during peak hours. And as you'll see in the picture to the right, restricting unsignalized median openings to left turns, which are a large part of the crash issue here. So just a couple of typical sections. The interim proposed, you can see those reduced width travel lanes, the increased buffer, and the right would be the south side here, which would include enhanced pedestrian facilities on both the north and south side, as well as a cycle facility. Just looking at midterm, there is a plan to widen Gibson Drive to 6 lanes between 301 and 75. So adding just a couple of additional right or left turn lanes that's on the eastbound Gibsonton, and reorienting some of that, which I'll get to in just a minute. So with that long-term widening, again, you see this is a pretty consistent section from what we saw before, with a multi-use trail on the south side, but with that 6-lane section there, of course, all reduced to either 10 or 11 foot drive and turn lanes to additionally slow some traffic. Just looking overall at one of the big spots is the I-75 interchange. So there are plans in place for that, or it is a program project. So reviewing the proposed improvements as well as the pedestrian facilities associated with that. Every time I have been out for a field visit here, there are people riding their bikes or walking on Gibson Drive across I-75. So it is an area that, while it doesn't show up in the data as much, it is used by pedestrians, particularly getting to the Walmart in that area. So creating that path, increasing the signalization at the on and off ramps, and enhancing the lighting there are part of the proposal. Moving on to Mango Road, these are some of the existing conditions, and I think you'll see it will lead you pretty quickly to what some of the recommendations are. You see sidewalk gaps, you see road shoulders that are sort of caving in, and you see some stormwater facilities and stormwater issues that could be addressed. One of the program projects for this corridor is a roundabout at Old Hillsborough Avenue, which is a great project and will help accomplish some of the issues, particularly at that intersection. Most of the crashes here are at the intersections along this stretch of Mango Road. We also do recommend adding speed feedback signs for drivers due to the grade change. There's actually quite a hill out in this part. So looking at some of the corridor improvements, the pavement markings, obviously updating those and clearing out some of these drainage facilities. You'll see some curb and gutter recommendations, as well as lighting and some traffic calming improvements, including the reduction of travel lane widths and trying to improve those planting strips and buffer between the sidewalks. So crosswalks and detectable warnings and constructing the gaps in the sidewalks, as you can see in the picture on the right side here. There are just two main gaps, but the southernmost one is particularly important. It goes from the Walmart in the south right to that mango park there, and serves a large area. So those are particularly important recommendations. Just looking at some of the other intersection improvements at the intersections listed here. There are several proposed at Clay Pit, just to give you an example. Repainting the crosswalks, signal backplates, curb and gutter to help with some of those stormwater drainage issues, and adding the sidewalks where they don't exist, which would be the number 5 on the south side there. We've also proposed at some of these intersections where people are stopping and where some of the rear end crashes are occurring, adding turn lanes where feasible to eliminate some of those conflicts, and adding some curb and gutter there. And then at the southernmost portion of the corridor, you'll see the Walmart on the right side in both of these pictures. So we're proposing, there are 2 entrances onto Mango Road from the Walmart. We would propose making the southernmost one a right in and right out, which would be using the median shown with the number 1 there. And then immediately to the north of that, creating a turn lane where the number 2 is noted, and still having that full movement in and out of the Walmart where the number 4 to the right is noted there. So I realize that's a lot to move through, but lastly, I have 15th Street for you. This is particularly important. The highest number of pedestrian crashes of any of these 8 corridors we're talking about, as well as the highest use of transit by ADA users. So again, some of the existing conditions you can see, you have a lot of sidewalk gaps. You do have some really good transit facilities, but you have people using the road and crossing in some unsafe areas. This one is great. The county has some ongoing improvements going on to address these very problems. You'll see the sidewalk gaps being filled in, raised crosswalks as shown in the lower picture there, and making those adjacent to some of those transit stops so that those users can cross right at the transit stops. This is just a little bit more on some of those plans from that project. And they include the refurbishment of pavement markings, filling in the sidewalk gaps, and installation of additional lighting. So just a couple of concept drawings. We looked a little further out on this. Using the existing pavement, you could add shared lane markings, although the traffic volumes may not be supportive of that. But going a little further, we've looked at a concept where you could have wider sidewalks, buffered bike lanes, and some other options. So with that, we are asking for your recommendation of approval to the MPO board, and we're happy to answer any questions on any of the corridors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wade and Lisa. Appreciate those reports. The questions from the committee on the Vision Zero report. Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Lisa and Wade, for that presentation. Of the many things we cover in this committee, I think this is one of the most important topics focused on, because far too many pedestrians and bike users and other users lose their lives due to just random chance. And so I'm happy to see the staff and the county taking up the initiative on this. A point of clarification I would like is, when you use the term buffered bike lane, does that indicate that the buffer is just a stripe? It's not like a physically separated. I mean, I think I understand what a cycle track is in terms of that being physically separated, but in terms of when you use the word buffered bike lanes, does that strictly mean that the buffering is done with paint, or would that mean paint the plastic cones that you see sometimes, or like a physical curb? I'm just hoping to get clarification on that point.
Great question, and it could be a number of those. It would not typically be the curb like you would see with a cycle track. We are referring pretty typically to just the double painted line, so a horizontal buffer. There are some serious issues with maintaining and keeping debris out of the curb and gutter areas behind some of the separated facilities. We've heard a lot about it, particularly at the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. But you can add those vertical delineator posts, the flexible posts as you described, as well, and they provide some additional buffering. But in this case, we were the term buffered bike lanes could refer to either those vertical delineator posts. It could refer to what you see here with the double 6-inch lines, or it could refer potentially to an even greater buffer, such as a curb. So it is a catch-all.
And then I'll add to that, the buffered bike lane project, that's a county project already in the works, says it's a 7-foot physically buffered bike lane. So they are planning some kind of physical buffering in that project. But Wade's right, they don't always have that. Protected bike lanes tend to be the ones with the physical barriers, but you know, it's semantics.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I guess then my general comment would be, you know, certainly I think the buffering is better than nothing, but just from the cyclists that I speak with, and I don't know if anybody here is the cyclist committee, but most of the cyclists I find, unless they're like super gung-ho Ironman types, that they're road bike people anyway, they don't want to ride in anything but a protected bike lane. I mean, I don't know if anybody goes out to Bayshore, and despite the fact that there's a bike lane on Bayshore and they've reduced the speed, you hardly ever see anyone on the bike lane, but they're all riding on the sidewalk along with all the pedestrians. And so I think if we're going to invest the money in this, which is definitely needed, I would just encourage the staff or the decision makers to really try to put some other kind of physical buffering other than just the lines, because I think it'll make a big difference in terms of actually getting people to use the bike lane, which is also important for pedestrians and bicyclists running into pedestrians.
Thank you. That's a great point.
That I'll yield back, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Hoyt. Any other questions on presentations?
Hi, this is Christine. I just want to say these presentations are fantastic. It's really great to see so many issues really getting attention. I want to respond to the protected versus buffered bike lane and echo the desire for most bicyclists is to have a physical barrier between them and any moving vehicle, more than just stripes of paint. But the challenge we're experiencing with the vertical delineators, now those don't stop cars because they are flex posts, but they aid greatly in reducing speed because there's a side, you know, there's a periphery object to motorists, so they really slow down and they give more distance. They're not inclined to drift into the bike lane. So I am a fan of those vertical delineators because they don't require much expense or space. However, the challenge is we don't have street sweepers yet that get into those spaces, and that is a huge problem. I understand in the city of Tampa that there are some street sweepers. I think they're even called Vision Zero street sweepers that will clear those lanes from the debris that builds up there, but we don't have them yet, and I have no knowledge of whether or not the county will pursue those as well. But that's why bicyclists do complain about those vertical delineators. They just don't get cleaned up. The lanes don't get cleaned up very much. But I wanted to thank Lisa and Wade for their presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Other comments from the committee? Questions? All right. Hearing no other questions, is there a motion to recommend this study and its accompanying recommendations to the MPO board?
This is Terrence. I'd like to move to approve.
I'll second. Rick will second.
Motion, and who made the second?
Rick Richmond.
Rick. Okay, Rick Richmond made the second. Is there any further discussion on this report or recommendation? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Bill Roberts,
Yes?
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Aye.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Vivian Handy,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Ed Mordrewski, David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
I made the motion, but yes.
Rick Richmond.
Yes.
Motion carries 15-0.
Thank you again.
Yes, thanks, guys.
All right. I got distracted. Did you hear the result?
Yes, the motion carried 15-0.
Fine, thank you very much. Thanks, committee members. The next item on our agenda is the meeting calendar for 2021. Clarendon?
Yeah, hang on. Let me see if I can bring that up.
Okay.
Hold on just a sec.
I promise that this resolution will be non-controversial.
Having trouble controlling the screen here. All right, let's try this one more time with feeling.
There we go.
Can you see the meeting dates?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So a couple of observations to make. One is we always bring our proposed meeting calendar to you ahead of time. Make sure that the majority of the committee can make it to these meetings. I would point out a couple of things about the 2021 proposed calendar. First of all of these will be scheduled for 9 o'clock in the morning unless otherwise noted. And I think there's only one in December that would deviate from that. There is a July recess as usual being proposed. And, unless we get dispensation from the governor's executive order, I assume we will still have to have at least a physical quorum present. We'll try to smooth out the wrinkles with these hybrid meetings. Hopefully get the audio working a little bit better. I think the biggest change to note is that these meeting dates are proposed for the first Wednesday of the month, which is a little different from normal or what we've been doing in the past. And that was necessitated primarily because the MPO meetings had to be moved to the second Wednesday. So we kind of got bumped. But in some ways, I think that gives us a little bit of an advantage because your meeting dates will precede the MPO meetings generally by about a week, which gives us a little bit more time to get recommendations in order, maybe hear from other committees first, and transmit your recommendations to the MPO board as usual. So these are the dates. I don't know if we need actually a motion on this, Mr. Chairman, but if there's discussion or any concerns, I guess now would be the time to hear it.
Thank you, Rich. Are there any questions or concerns to be expressed about the calendar? Otherwise, we will accept it by consensus. Any questions? All right, I think the calendar for next year is accepted by consensus. Thank you all very much. That concludes our action items. That concludes our action items on the agenda. The next item is the status report on the MPO non-discrimination policy. Thank you, Amy, for staying.
Joshua, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, do you want to run your own presentation, or would you like me to run it?
You can run it, Rich. It's all right.
Okay.
You already have it there.
Hang on a minute. Are you seeing it on the screen?
I am.
Okay. Please make sure I can see it on the screen.
All right, I'll get started.
Go ahead.
So good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I know we're in a long meeting, so I'll try to make this quick. Josh Barber, MPO staff. I'm here to provide an update on our Title VI and non-discrimination plan. Next slide.
Okay, it's not advancing on my end.
Rich, if you want to give me control, I can do it.
See if I can do that. Okay. I just gave you control.
All right. Can you all see the presentation? Yep.
I can see it. Please proceed.
All right. So I want to give a little bit of project background before we kind of dive into the 2021 update. So the MPO is required to regularly update our non-discrimination program by federal and state law, and every 3 years is considered best practice. So our last plan was adopted in 2018. And at that time, we looked at the following areas that are shown here. This includes identifying our underserved communities, where they're located spatially, looking at how we engage underserved communities in our work, looking at how we evaluate the equity outcomes of our plans, such as the long-range transportation plan, the TIP, and other program areas. And how we integrated them in our program areas, whether through prioritization or public engagement. And then also as part of that process, by federal law, we're required to have a Title VI complaint process, procedures, and a staff liaison. So if a citizen or community member feels they've been discriminated against in the provision of our programs, they can file a complaint, and that will go up to FDOT and FHWA. And we also provided a short set of recommendations for improving equity in our planning processes. So as part of this year's update, we will be expanding the plan to include the Planning Commission's activities as well. And this is a pretty big endeavor. It's not really something we've ever done before, and nationwide there aren't really many examples. So it is an important step towards advancing equity throughout our agency, though, in a coordinated and intentional manner. So I want to kind of keep stepping back a little bit and continue to put this all in context for you, and highlight our obligations to do this work. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the first major piece of civil rights legislation in the country. Title VI of that act states that no person shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And this language was passed down through FHWA down to agencies receiving federal funds, such as the MPO. And this language was really the model for pieces of civil rights legislation that came after that, such as the American with Disabilities Act in 1990, or the Rehabilitation Act in 73, or the Age Discrimination Act in 75. And those sets of legislation kind of cover a broad non-discrimination program, which we have here today. So these pieces of civil rights legislation, especially the landmarks Civil Rights Act of 1964, were essential in preventing the continuation of explicit discrimination by government and private entities. So prior to this, policies such as those expressed in the map on the left here were relatively commonplace. Discrimination was explicit and obvious and intentional. The map shows the now infamous Homeowners Loan Corporation map, which graded neighborhoods on their desirability for mortgage lending. And the red line neighborhoods, which are deemed the most hazardous for mortgage lending, are almost always cited as having a large population of non-white racial and ethnic groups. And while we've made great strides in ending this sort of explicit and institutionalized discrimination by government entities, the legacy of these policies are still very much with us. So you can see in the map to the right, concentrations of racial minority populations in Hillsborough County. And then to the right of that, low-income households, a dot density map of low-income households. And really what I want to point out here is how these low-income neighborhoods, these neighborhoods with concentrations of racial minority groups align with formerly redline neighborhoods from the 1940s. And also consider that homeownership was likely the largest way of building intergenerational wealth in our country in the 20th century, and what the lasting impacts of those been. And continuing on, these legacies continue to be apparent in a lot of ways across Hillsborough County, whether that's in terms of home ownership rates between blacks and whites, air quality, transportation safety, neighborhood safety. In the map to the right, which I pulled from our health atlas, you can see the incidence of asthma in the county, and you can see concentrations of high asthma rates in West Tampa, in East Tampa, and then traveling up towards the university area, which coincides right with our low income and racial and ethnic minority neighborhoods. So, I want to point out that this is really just a snapshot for a few groups with a few measures, right? Similar disparities can be found along other lines of diversity as well, and in other areas. And these trends, I think, really show that while non-discrimination is an important first step, we have to take a real proactive approach to advancing equitable outcomes as an agency in all our work, and undoing the legacy of historical discrimination in our county as well. So with all that background, I think we can start talking about our 2021 plan update. MPO staff and Planning Commission staff have been hard at work to this end of expanding the plan to include the Planning Commission and seeking to advance equity in all aspects of our work. So some of our major goals for this plan update is, of course, to continue to meet federal and state requirements for Title VI environmental justice, but also to work to institutionalize equity throughout our agencies, to improve our data tracking and performance measures of our equity outcomes, conditions, community engagement, and of course, community representation throughout our agency. Excuse me. To help us meet these goals, we've put together a scope of work to keep us on track, which includes the following areas here. And I'll take a little bit of time to kind of walk through some of these. So our first task is, of course, defining equity. You know, what does equity mean? It's a word that's so often thrown about, you know, but it's important for us as an agency to define it, right? So these are some of the major components we've identified through our review of literature on justice and equity in the realms of transportation, but broadly in public spaces as well. These 5 are identified by a researcher named Separators. The first one is, of course, distribution. So how are benefits and burdens of plans and projects distributed across our county? And this is a real important component, but it's not the end all be all of equity, right? So we have these components such as recognition, looking at historical and current inequity and the systems that uphold those. Interaction, you know, how are our interpersonal interactions, relationships carried out across the county? Care and repair, so how are public spaces maintained? You know, which neighborhoods get priority for, say, roadway resurfacing or sidewalk improvements? And then, of course, we have this aspect of procedure. You know, how are decisions made? Who makes them? And who is involved? And how representative are decision makers of the county as a whole? And you know, there's of course nuance even within these, right? So within distribution, you know, there's this question of, should all people in the county receive an equal amount of benefits and burdens of our planning outcomes, or should some neighborhoods or persons get more than others on the basis of existing inequality? So that's some of the stuff we've been kind of wrestling with. Task 2 is really looking at the history of planning across our county and how that may have led to some inequitable outcomes that manifest today. So looking at public housing, which is historically segregated, starting in the 1940s all the way through the Fair Housing Act in '68, as well as our zoning codes, the homeowners loan corporation maps. What impact did those maps have on our community, and what did it look like? Urban renewal, highway construction. So we're reviewing a lot of old plans, old documents, primary sources to kind of get a better idea of how we got to where we are today and to contextualize some of the problems we face. And next, we're doing a series of community mapping. This is a process that's mandated by the Federal Highway Administration as part of a Title VI program. And we have a lot of leeway in how we do this. So we've minorly revised the methodology identified in the 2018 plan, looking at concentrations of a particular demographic across the county using percentiles, but then also a new way using dot density. So whereas one is more sensitive to, say, concentrations in a rural neighborhood, the dot density really shows where people actually are across the county. And taken together, I think they really provide a clear overview of existing demographics than either one of them would alone. And task 4 is looking at our existing work. How are we integrating equity, or how have we been integrating equity, whether that's in public engagement, in the prioritization of projects, and other areas throughout our program areas. And that includes the Planning Commission's comprehensive plans and special area studies, as well as the MPO's primary program areas. And task 5 is, of course, public engagement. The 2018 plan didn't have a public engagement component. And so we thought it was really important for this plan update to do this. So part of this is updating our website, making Title VI and equity a more apparent component, and then trying to facilitate community leadership on this. And some of the stuff we'll be doing is, of course, distributing a survey. And then really the big crux is some demographic-based focus groups. So we're planning on 5 right now. That includes racial minorities, ethnic minorities, people with low income, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQ population across the county to kind of get a better insight on perceptions of community planning and challenges they face accessing transportation or housing or jobs and other areas where the Planning Commission and the MPO can directly impact quality of life. So we have a little sign up here if you all are interested in receiving more information on this. I'm also happy to provide a copy of this. And if you or anyone you know would be interested in participating in some of these demographic-based focus groups, please feel free to send them our way. So just a little overview of our timeline. We'll be doing some of these tasks through about January with the goal of kicking off our public engagement process around February and March. The survey will go live probably in the next month or so. And we'll be drafting recommendations for this as an agency in March and July with the goal of an adoption in summer of 2021. And in-house staff are primarily conducting this, but we're getting assistance from Charles Brown from Rutgers University. He's a national expert on transportation and equity, as well as Danielle Jackson, who is the owner of a local public relations firm, TEL. And so with that, that's the presentation. Try to keep it short for y'all. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation and status report. Are there questions from the committee? Anyone here?
I just have one actually. If you can go back to the slide with the website, I was trying to jot that down. And thank you again, Joshua, for your presentation. It was awesome.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to also thank you, and I think this is has the potential to be beneficial, particularly when we speak clearly about what some historical issues have been. One question is, it's good to do studies and planning, but do we have an idea of how we get this information once it's all done to people who make the decisions so that they are aware of what means of equity that we're trying to reach? That's one question. And then the next one is, well, I'd like to be involved with some of these. My name's Artie Fryer, but primarily I want to know what the action is going to be once we get to doing the analysis and such, how we're going to get that to decision makers. Is there a plan to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that this will be going before the Planning Commission and the MPO board eventually for adoption. The recommendations themselves will be up to MPO staff as well and Planning Commission staff, as well as the boards as a whole to advance, right? So the plan will contain recommendations on a variety of topic areas, such as community representations on our boards, and also just how we integrate, how we conduct public involvement, and what issues that we need to start addressing and tackling, as well as how we prioritize projects. So I think those are going to be the primary ways is taking it to our boards and our commissions. And I could see where, there is a lot of energy behind this topic. There's a lot of interest. The county is working on an equity profile currently. So I would hope for some long-term collaboration with our other government agencies in advancing some of the recommendations of the plan. And just for example, something like, how are transportation, how is like roadway resurfacing prioritized across the county? And then can we include an equity component in that, just as an example? And that would take collaboration with other government agencies. So I hope I answered your question, Artie.
No, thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is Vivian. I have a, okay, thank you. I'm looking at the community mapping, and this is all very interesting. I think of particular note are the areas that are most subject to urban sprawl are some of those darker, the blue and darker blue areas, particularly in South County. And I'm wondering what will change to actually put some teeth into this. In my experience, the minority and low income areas don't get resurfacing and improved roadways and sidewalks until the lily white subdivisions start coming their way. And I don't know when that's going to stop. And if anything, the more sprawl that happens, the more those low income and minority people are displaced. And speaking for South County and Waimama, I don't know where they go. They certainly aren't afforded pedestrian and bicycle facilities with new developments. So yeah, I think my question, kind of to follow up on what Artie's question is what, I know, and it's early in the process, but what are the teeth in this plan that will ensure that we can actually make these things happen instead of it just being a great idea in lip service?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And, you know, I think my response is going to be, it really is going to be up to our elected officials to hold themselves accountable to the recommendations that staff are providing in the plan itself. So the only major binding aspects of the plan for the agencies will be having a Title VI complaint process and procedure in place, and having a staff liaison to support that. The recommendations themselves will have to be carried out by our MPO, our Planning Commission, and then shared with other government entities.
This is Artie again.
Okay.
One of the things that I would ask that you keep in mind, and if it's possible, I'd like for this to be moved forward, is to keep us abreast of what's happening. Based on what you just said, I would hope that you keep us informed. I don't know what the schedule would be, what's reasonable, but certainly I'd like to hear more about how this develops and matures.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from Joshua from the committee?
And Joshua, this is David Bailey again. I would like to participate in those committees as well and surveys.
Yes, sir. I'll put you down.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? All right, well, Joshua, thank you for that report.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Thank you, Chair.
We look forward to hearing from you in the future. The next item on our agenda is we move into unfinished new business. There's an at-large seat for a person under 30. Rich Berman, you're going to handle this item?
Yes, sir, I will. You'll remember Dana Lazarus stepped down a while back because she's now on staff. That leaves us a vacancy, and we have put out a call for interested people who might be interested and eligible to fill the seat for a person under 30. I do have several promising candidates or applications. I think what I'd like to do maybe is to send them out to the committee members for you to look at in the interim between now and say the next meeting, and then get back to me with maybe your top 3 candidates who you would like to see serving on the MPO to fill this seat. In the past, we've invited the candidate to come before the committee and sort of introduce themselves and express their interest in their own words. And we can certainly do that. I just think it would be better to maybe do a little selection ahead of time and maybe go with a a top 1 or 2 and invite them to come before the committee. The committee does have to does have the right to nominate somebody to fill the seat. So that's it.
Good. So we would select our top 2 or 3, potentially do some interviews, then make a recommendation to the MPO for approval. That process.
That's what I would suggest. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Any questions from the committee or other suggestions?
Rich, are you accepting additional applications, or do you have enough and you just want to move forward from here?
Well, I would never say no. If there's somebody that's you'd like to suggest or recommend, there is an online application form that we've been using. So I would direct anybody who's interested to look for that. It's under on our website under Plan With Us. I think is the name of the drop-down menu, but I will send that out along with the applications that I've already received, so that if there's somebody else, they can certainly apply. I just think that we have enough, I think, at this point, but certainly I would never turn somebody away if they were really interested. We always have vacancies come up, and just because they're under 30 doesn't mean they might fit some other slot.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fernandez, you have a question?
I do, Chair. Rich, question of applicability of the Sunshine Law. You provide us a list of 10 applicants and whatever it is they filled out. If I want to reach out to somebody and talk to them personally, can I do that?
Yeah, as long as they're not already a member.
Okay, I thought so, but I just want to be sure. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say, though, just as a word of advice, is that I mean, one reason we ask people to come before the committee is so that everybody can hear the same thing.
Sure.
But if you have a question or you want to ask somebody a question, you certainly can.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Rich on this matter? Will you be sending those out for the next meeting then, Rich?
That's my intention. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the Hillsborough County School District Coordination. Again, Rich, I'll turn to you. This is what you and I talked about before.
Yeah, so this came up at your last regular meeting, I think in September. And there's a letter that was included in the agenda package that sort of outlines the issue. Essentially, the school district and the county need to coordinate better on the location of new schools, particularly as it relates to sufficient being provided with sufficient transportation facilities, road connections, sidewalks, et cetera. And evidently, that's raised some issues, especially down in South Hillsborough County, where there's rapid development occurring, and the opening of a new high school there on Baum Road. I think I reported to you back a couple months ago what was going on there. And I think Chairman Roberts asked to have this discussed or brought before the committee again, and actually reached out to Amber Dickerson, who is the school district's manager for growth management. Her letter is the one that's actually in the packet. One of the things that she has suggested is that there be established a school siting task force comprised of experts and decision makers from the school district, Hillsborough County, the Planning Commission, and the MPO, and stakeholders from the development community. And I think that committee is coming together. I don't believe the Board of County Commissioners has appointed, or maybe has just appointed, folks to serve on that from their own membership. So that's in the offing. It has not been duly constituted or met yet, but I think that's coming. I know, Bill, you reached out to Amber. I don't know if you've heard back from her. You have not? Okay, well, we will continue to carry this on our list of potential agenda topics and reach out again to the school district and county folks to see if we can get this agenda at some future meeting. It may be that we have to wait until the task force, school siting task force, actually meets for a couple of times before we have a better response.
Hey, Rich, this is Vivian. Could you please repeat who would be members of this task force? What would the group consist of?
So it would be comprising topic experts and decision makers from the school district, the county, the planning commission, the MPO, and stakeholders from the development community.
Okay. It seems like something is lacking, something from like an environmental perspective, a sustainability perspective, something like that. Whenever I see that the development community is going to be participating, it always seems like there should be some balance there. I don't know if we have any say-so in this whole process, but that's my comment.
Good comment. I thought this issue was important enough, particularly in South County, but countywide, that I'd like to see if the committee would be interested in inviting someone from the school board to come and either make a presentation or at least have a conversation with us at one of our upcoming meetings. Is there any feeling for or against that invitation?
I think that's a great idea.
I could barely hear any of what was just said. Sorry.
I offered to the committee to have someone from the school board come and make a presentation to meet with this committee. I heard no objection. So thank you, Rich.
Sounds good to me.
The last item on our agenda appears to be the Heart Capital Improvement Program. Going to hear an update on that?
Yeah, again, this is Rich Clarendon. Very quickly, just to remind folks, we did have a presentation at your last regular meeting on the from Johnny Wong on the performance measures and targets related to transit assets and state of good repair. And there was some concern about the targets and not achieving them or having difficulty achieving them. And I think the question that I think, if I recall, came from Chairman Roberts is, if the surtax funding does not materialize, what is Plan B? And I did pose that question to Hart, and I think the short answer is that they have beefed up their capital improvements program, particularly in the realm of maintaining their equipment and vehicles and facilities. I included a summary page from their adopted budget, the fiscal 21 budget. It shows a pretty hefty increase, almost 50% in these program categories, most of which, or I should say the most significant increase of funding comes from Hart's general revenues. But there's also, I mean, that's the good news. The bad news is that there is a long list of unfunded capital improvements totaling over $100 million. So I think the issue is still out there. The way I sort of left it with Hart is because they just appointed a new CEO who hasn't even started yet. We may want to give her a chance to get her feet under on the ground before asking Hart to come back. And I think the time to do that might be sometime towards next summer when they're formulating their next budget for the next fiscal year. So that would be my recommendation. And I think Hart would be agreeable to that. Having difficulty hearing you, Bill.
We do want to, I think that's a reasonable plan, and I think we do want to keep this issue on our radar. So I'm fine with that. Is there any other new business to come before the committee?
Just one other thing, Mr. Chairman. Your next meeting is in December, and it is scheduled for, I believe it's the 9th. Let me just double check my calendar here. Got too many windows open, obviously. I apologize. It's scheduled for December 16th. It's a joint meeting with the TAC as usual. Unfortunately, because of restrictions related to the pandemic, I don't think we're going to be able to get together physically. We're trying to keep this as a light agenda and one that doesn't require votes. So it may be a totally virtual meeting with virtual refreshments. So that's the best we can do. It's scheduled to start around the middle, around noon and the middle of the day, but we'll get the schedule out to you more specifically.
All right. There being no further business coming, let me thank the committee for their patient hard work today. Thank you, staff, Rich, and all of your folks for making this hybrid system work. I'm sure we'll be tweaking it as we go along. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a very seamless first step.